One of my favorite, most beloved, and most famous teachers is an actor named Anna Devere Smith. And she's done a bunch of really cool stuff. You've seen her on TV, but you may have also seen some of her wonderful one-woman shows. She had a wonderful phrase that she shares, and she says that if you say a word enough, it becomes you. Now, this, I think, was a warning from her grandmother about why you shouldn't swear. Because if you say shit, 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 before long you become that shitty shit, 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 shit. But it's also really interesting in terms of the other side of words. If we say a word enough, it becomes us. So what happens when we say rich, wise, beautiful words enough, again, again, again? Do we become wise and rich and beautiful too? I think she believes so. I think Anna Devere Smith would believe so. Now she's an actor. She spends a great amount of time and energy saying words until they feel as if they were her own. That's what actors do. They don't just memorize things, they learn them by heart. That difference. What's the difference between memorizing, kind of like a thing we do with the parts of a cell, endoplasmic reticulum, the highway of the cell. I mean, I know that because I had a really good ninth grade teacher who made me memorize lists of things. But to learn something by heart, well, it certainly includes memorizing, but it has something else to it. It seems to that it becomes part of our thinking, part of the way it has residue in our muscles. Maybe the strength and the power of the meaning also lives somehow in our dreaming, in our brain, so that we can access it anytime we need it. So these are interesting questions that we could argue about, we could hypothesize, we could experiment with. But I wanted you all to really have this experience of learning things by heart. In live classes, we do this really, we learn those recitation texts. The assignment is to learn them top to bottom, learn them by heart, memorize the whole thing, and then perform it. Well, we're not together. We don't have the luxury of practice, of warm up time together, and so and I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to cheat. And the truth of the matter is, we don't really have the space or the opportunity in our lives to learn lots of difficult things by heart. It takes time. We're not actors. We have other jobs to do. But having things learned by heart really can help make a very effective part of a performance, of a speech. And because when we know something by heart, we know the thought, we can send it to the audience, and audiences love it when we do. And one of the ways we do that is by looking at them. And you've heard the word eye contact, which is a phrase I hate. Good speakers don't have eye contact. Eye contact, you think about contact paper or contact sports, and if we were to think about what contact is, it would be some kind of like mucusy juxtaposition of my eyeball next to yours, and that would be gross. So when we talk about eye contact, we don't really talk about eyes smashing up against each other. We're talking about looking at people, or we're talking about focusing on an audience, or rather, better yet, we're talking about taking a thought and sending it out so that our audience can catch it. I think it's like a ball. I'm thinking about thoughts like little juggling balls, and that rather than just looking at somebody, what I want to do is I want to take that thought ball and I want to throw it out to a specific person so that they can catch it, and they give me a sign that they have. You can tell when someone has gotten your idea, you can tell because they're attentive. You can recognize it. You can be sure that you've landed that thought. And so that's I think, a much better way of thinking about this notion of our presence, our gaze, and the power of our attention with audiences. When we're really being generous, We learn our thoughts well enough that we can look out at the audience and almost as if we had laser beam eyes, we can send that thought so it hits their face and hits their heart. That's what we're looking for with our attention, with our energy, and with our focus. So, okay, well, when you learn a sentence by heart, you can do that. You don't have to read it. You don't have to look at the board. You know what the thought is. You can send it out. And so that's one of the benefits of practice and being really squarely grounded in the knowledge that we're sharing. That's what's so fun about being a professor. I've done this a few times. I've lived this material for years, actually, decades now. I know my stuff, and you can tell. I can tell because I enjoy it. I love living in this wonderful forest, jungle, garden of my ideas and my knowledge. And you can tell it too. You are sure that I know my stuff, that I'm speaking from my intellectual treasure, that I know it. Part of that is because I'm looking at you. I'm being here with you and in this lovely traffic of ideas that is teaching and learning together. So when it's new material for you, when it's new material for me, I got to have a process of getting it in. And when we talk about rote learning, rote is just an old-fashioned word for repetition. Learning by rote, memorizing by rote, means to memorize through repetition. And so we've looked at that memory tips and so on and so forth. But just to show you an example, so I've got the Hamlet reading here. A lovely little speech, famous speech for speech coaches and teaching and public speaking teachers. But I'm going to show you how I do it. It's not easy. It's a lot of work, and I don't do it enough, and I'd like to do it more. But I have a sentence. So when I'm learning by rote, I'm really not using my brain. I'm really going to be using my sound and my muscles to get these words into me. And I also use my fingers. So here's how I do it. Here's a sentence. Speak this speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Now that's about as big as a chunk as I can do at one point. That's a long chunk, but I'm going to try doing it. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Okay, that's one. I'm going to say it 10 times. In my face, in my muscles, slow, clear, fast, slow, loud, soft. I'm going to say it 10 times without even thinking, with my eyes on the paper. I'm going to say it 10 times, and then I'm going to see if it has stuck yet. Okay, 1. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it to you. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speak. Boom, I did it. Yay, me! Now, that's really cool. It took about a minute or two. I don't know how long it take me. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Speech the speak, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. I've kind of got it. I can test it in a couple minutes. I mean, it's in my short-term memory. I've used rote repetition to get it in there. I might try it later today at dinner time. I might just speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Tomorrow when I'm showering, I might do it if I do it a couple times and have some intervals in between, this is great. We call this retrieval practice. I've put it in, and then I'm going to practice retrieving it, pulling it out of my brain at random intervals in different places over time. That's how it really shifts from on the paper to in the short-term memory to in my long-term memory. And this rote repetition, when it's connected to retrieval practice, when I try to access it later is how I can very efficiently get stuff into me. And I really haven't thought that much about it yet. I haven't really used my intellect. I haven't used my images. I haven't used any of those sort of intellectual English teachery things that we will also do. I've just used rote repetition, the sound and the muscles of my body to sort of press it into me. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, drippingly on the tongue. I can use my analytical brain later to notice all those P's. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it, drippingly on the tongue. I love how drippingly on the tongue trips my tongue as it describes tripping on the tongue. Shakespeare is great that way. The sound and the meaning of his language often reinforce each other. So, okay, rote learning. Now, I think it's wonderful with literature, with thoughts, with meaning as rich as your recitation text to memorize them all. I can do some of them. The lead light of my life. Some of them. But again, I'm an English professor and I don't have a day job. This is my day job. Actors do this all the time. That's one of the reasons why actors love to do Shakespeare, because the richness of the language really trains their brains and it trains their faces to do complex things. But for regular old folk and in a regular speech, you may not have the luxury certainly during your college days, of doing something over and over again, of building it up. You may be doing it once and you won't have the time to memorize everything, but what you can do is the first sentence of your speech, the last sentence of your speech, and maybe memorize any other really, really strong sentence. So that's going to be our assignment for the recitation texts. When you do your final presentation, some of you are going to go for it. There's just amazing people at Housatonic. Some of you may find real value in the work that I'm suggesting. And you may take your recitation text and day by day learn a sentence a day. In a week or two, you'll have the whole thing down. If you are bold enough, courageous enough, committed enough, and if you're hungry for this training, that's a really great assignment. Memorize your recitation text. But so that's cool. That's awesome and artistic and A-worthy. But for all of us, I want you at least to work on 3 sentences. I want everybody to have their recitation text first line memorized. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, trippingly on the tongue. And then the last sentence, whatever that may be. And then I want you to have one more. What's the strongest sentence in the heart of your recitation? That will be the 3rd sentence that you are learning by heart. Really press inside you. Now, when we get to the recitations, if you've learned some by heart, the next thing to do is how do you get through the whole recitation? Or how can you effectively pull sentences up from a text and send the thoughts out to the audience? And I just want to show you this quickly, that if I'm reading, if I have to work from manuscript, which I don't advise. None of the speeches we've looked at this semester have people reading manuscripts. Brene Brown doesn't do it. Cal Newport doesn't do it. They know their stuff. I don't read from notes. I know my stuff. And part of being an adult professional speaker is knowing your stuff really well. We don't mind if you have some notes or looking at your slides, but we don't like it. We really don't like it when people read their speeches. Very often we've written them out before, but we've done that to learn the material, not to create a script. But with important stuff, with literary texts, we really have to have word for word. So when I'm doing this, here's how I do it. I memorize the first sentence, speak the speech I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Then I take my fingers and I go down onto the paper where I've printed something large and double-spaced, and then I try to use my eyes to pick up the whole sentence and then send it out. So it goes like this. But if you mouth it, as many of your players do, I had, as Leaf the town crier spoke my lines. Nor do not saw the air too much with your hand. Now, I don't know if you guys can see it, but for in the whirlwind of your passion, you must acquire and beget a temperance that may give a certain smoothness. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but what I'm doing is I'm looking down at my fingers. I'm gathering up a whole sentence, reading it really quickly in my eyes, that I'm trying to send the thought out to my audience or to the camera, as it may be. It's a tricky technique. It takes some time to practice. But for any of you who are working reading text, and that means all of you when you get to the recitation, yes, you must memorize the first line. But as you're practicing for these final presentations, you can print out your text, 14 font, 16 font, print it out double space so it's really big on the page, and you can simply practice scanning and then sending the thought. Scanning, sucking in the idea, and then sending out the thought. It will slow you down. It will keep your attention to the camera and then to the people beyond the camera that you would be wanting to address. And you'll start to develop this wonderful, mature, professional rhythm of finding your information, but sending it out, landing thought balls so that the audience can catch it. And that's the real big change between more practiced and novice speakers. Is novice speakers are, I'm doing okay. And better than that is this shift in your thinking. It's not, am I doing okay? It's, are they getting it? And if your attention is out there, if you're sending thought balls, if you're landing the ideas, then you'll be able to see, you'll be able to sense how that they're catching it, that they're with you, that you are effectively, generously, and graciously sending thoughts out and making it easy for your audiences to catch. Welcome to the world of thought balls, landing thoughts, and generously sending ideas so that they're easy to catch by the audience. Okay, guys, see you next time.